What's up, y'all? I hope y'all doing pretty good. Yo, I wanted to run through something real quick. I found something that was kind of interesting. I thought maybe there's some gems in this bad boy. We can kind of dive through it and see what we find. So let's just dive into it. Let's see what we got. So, this is pretty dope. This is going to be, here, let me make sure and get it right here, y'all. This is going to be the American nations, or outlines of the general history, ancient and modern, including the whole history of the earth and mankind in the Western Hemisphere, the philosophy of American history, the annals, traditions, civilization, languages, etc. of all the American nations, tribes, empires, and states. It's by Rafinesque, CS Professor Constantine Samuel. Publication date, they say, is 1836. And yeah, let's dive into it. So let me see, where we at? So we're going to be on page 75 in this book, or 76 in the actual book itself. And I'm going to zoom in so we can just get a better look at this. Let me go full screen as well. Get this bad boy legible for everybody on the screen, you dig? Alright, let's go. So it says, Chapter 3 in Cataclysms. The American Cataclysms, or considerations on the periods of the American geogamy, ontogeny, floods, and the ancient population, etc. of both Americas. So it says, history does not merely consist in accumulating facts. These constitute the annals of empires, but the real philosophical history has a nobler aim. It seeks results, teaches lessons of wisdom, brands with infamy the foes of mankind, and inspires veneration for the benefactors of the human race. It presents examples worthy to be followed and records the crimes to be avoided. The several departments of history that are distinguished as biography, civil and ecclesiastical annals, moral and physical surveys of mankind, comparative philology, archaeology, chronology, mythology, etc., all combine to instruct and amuse, to record the past and present, and to lead to better future actions and improved social order. The notions often forget the wise lessons of time and experience, but they are continually recalled to memory and view by the historians who seek the truth in setting aside the sway of human passions or national prejudices, present the faithful mirror of history to the eyes of posterity. Such is my aim. American history has been so much despised or perverted that few lessons have been drawn from it, yet it affords ample scope for reflection, study, and admiration. Nearly one half of the habitable plane, they say globe, you know we on that plane, during all the past ages cannot fail to offer a variety of subjects to draw the attention of philosophy, wisdom, and philanthropy, that mutual benevolence of mankind which ought ever to be felt, but is so often discarded or forgotten through the contrary tendencies of pride, lust, cupidity, and all the baneful passions, not keeping the code. The connections of historical facts with all the sciences afford another useful theme that may vastly increase our comparative knowledge. Much of it has arisen, besides observation, from accurate comparison, analysis, and generalization, which combine to give results, enlarging the field and sphere of human knowledge in all its branches. If we go back, by the help of geology, to the most remote periods of existence and life in this hemisphere, we find it like the remainder of the rest of the plain, immersed under the ocean. There, in the depths of the briny waves, the actual rocks now supporting the dry soil were formed and mature, superposed and intermingled by aquatic and volcanic phenomena and cataclysms, if not by superated aerial depositions. Then were formed the primitive strata of America, ere life had begun to vivify the waters. Then were cast the porphyries, granites, shales, basalts, and other primitive or volcanic rocks that are now chiefly found in Boreal and Western America, the Andes, Mounts Parima in Brazil, the Austral and Boreal Islands, Haiti, and the Antilles. This was the first period of terrestrial creation. Luis Agassiz, Harvard professor, first to rise from the depths of the ocean. America. Super volcano in my mind, Yellowstone. Biggest in the world? After this period of unknown length began the epocha of aquatic life, when the breath of God moving on the waters. Hawa, the breath. The breath of God. Man, watch out. Moving on the waters gave life and motion to organized aquatic beings. 1. Plants and Frucites. 2. Spongites and alsinites. 3. Polyps and corals. 4. Worms and radicals. 5. Slugs and shells. 6. Mollusca and cephalopods. 7. Trilobites and crustaceans. All incipient vegetating beings or inferior unbony animals gradually evolved and born in the waters of the sea, followed by the more perfect vertebrated aquatic animals, 8 fishes and sharks, 9 snakes and reptiles, lastly 10 seals and whales, some of which require shallow water to dwell and breed. This was the second period of American creation, aquatic life. The third epocha is that of the destruction of aquatic life by cataclysm and depositions. Submarine volcanic cavernous eruptions or other causes throwing suddenly in a soft sandy or muddy state the substances that have formed the secondary mountains or strata of samites, argillites, calcarites, carbonites, etc., that overwhelm the aquatic tribes in their way, which, becoming therein entombed as living metals of this plane, declare to us these mighty successive cataclysms or floods of sand, clay, lime, and coal, now met in vast regions, the Alleghanies and Central North America, Florida and the Bahama Islands, the hills and plains of Brazil, Chile, East Peru, and Central Marañón. This was the second period of terrestrial formation in America, the third of successful eventful periods. The fourth must have been the rise of the land above the waters, if not already partly begun, the epocha of terrestrial upheaving and distortion of strata by an awful inward force, either volcanic or calorific, or of growing crystallization, forming mountains and islands, raising them above the ocean to become the nucleus of future continents. The American hemisphere had then probably 2 great islands in the north and south, with many smaller islands between them and the tropical sea, the Alleghany and Atlantis, forming 2 others in the east, and many others studding the 2 polar regions. The insulated mountain tract between Lake Nicaragua and the long valley of Choco must then have formed another island of the Antilles. Guyana, or Parima, was also another large island, while Brazil was a vast peninsula attached to the Andes. I have endeavored to express this first configuration of America in my 2 maps of North and South America, when the ocean was yet about 500 feet higher than it is actually. Whether this cataclysm was contemporaneous throughout or by successive throes must be ascertained by geogony. This was the 4th period of terrestrial events in this hemisphere, but the first of terrestrial separate existence. When the dry land had appeared, the creative power of God exerted upon the virgin mold of the mountains drew forth into life plants and flowers, trees and palms, with its successful terrestrial animals: 1. Worms and slugs, 2. Insects and spiders, 3. Snakes and reptiles, 4. Birds and fowls, 5. Beasts and bats. Streams began to flow, valleys were excavated in the soft, or yielding strata by heavily tides and powerful streams. Then the fishes of the sea ascended the rivers and filled the streams and lakes. A few shell and other aquatic animals sent also colonies into fresh waters. This was the 5th period of the terrestrial events, that of terrestrial life. Meantime, the land was continuing to rise or the ocean to sink. The dry soil was extending. Land volcanoes began to appear in the Andes and elsewhere, overwhelming some living tribes. The carbonic volcanoes had new paroxysms, slightly mud involved terrestrial plants and trees in successful eruptions. The clay mud or colored sand was forming tertiary strata on the shores involving sea animals, shells, reptiles, and fishes. This was the sixth period of the terrestrial events, that of land volcanoes. After all these, mankind was created by God, Hawa, and appeared as Lord of the earth and the complement of living creation. This may be deemed another period, if we like, although it was but the complement of the terrestrial living productions begun in the fifth and probably proceeding in the sixth, where the first men or men appeared and dwelt is unknown or very dubious. Dual. Asia is commonly deemed the first dwelling of mankind, and Central Asia or Tibet the cradle of our race, although China, India, Arabia, Syria, Ceylon, etc. claim the same honor. But few authors have placed this cradle in America, and even then, not for the Adamites. Yet America had some inhabitants before the flood, if we are to believe the concurrent traditions of many American nations who keep the memory of it and point to their refuge. Now, I want y'all to remember too, I'm going into these accounts with an open mind, picking out the gems where I can. Don't think just because we read in this that everything we saying is what he's saying is, we pulling out babies and gems. So understand, we see that they talking about Asia, but where is Asia Major? That's America. Y'all trying to say just because now in this time period that there's a land bridge or that there's, you see, we were connected. Okay, let's really talk about it for real. Let's really talk about it. Of these American antediluvians, we know little or nothing. Their traces are few and uncertain. It would be otherwise if we could identify them with the antediluvian Atlantis or find their diluvial remains. The skeletons found in Guadalupe and on River Santas of Brazil by Captain Elliot, described by Meigs in the Transactions of American Philosophical Society in 1827 in tufa with shells, may have been buried there like the mummies of many American caves. Many American caves. Mummies. Some of the American mounds. They're so old they gotta call them mounds. They've got so much strata on them, they gotta call them mounds. Have appeared antediluvian, but the fact is not well proved at this time, at his time. You gotta remember, this 1836, y'all. The subterranean antiquities are also of equivocal character. The town of log houses lately found in Georgia, buried under golden Clismean soil, cannot be so remote. The soil, instead of diluvial, may be a deep alluvial. All these facts on these remote times shall be hereafter collected, presented, and examined carefully. As much as he would wish so, that ain't necessarily the case, because the Smithsonian done came and took a lie. Thus, has been presented by geological results a rapid sketch of the American periods to the birth of mankind. These 6 periods, or yums, are well ascertained as to succession, but their duration is unknown, and each of them includes several subordinate periods, which it is not needful to investigate in these outlines. The works on geology may be consulted if required. These 6 yums, or great periods, do not answer exactly to the 6 yums, or manifestations of the Mosaic cosmogony, since geogony begins only with the 3rd, ending with the 5th. Such Oriental accounts are always deserving our attention and susceptible of the deepest philosophical commentary, as they mainly agree with all the detected facts. But there are at least 3 accounts of the creation or cosmogony in the Sefer, or Hebrew Bible. 1. That of Job. 2. Of Moses in chapter 2 of Genesis from verse 4 to 25. In both, no yums, days, or periods are mentioned. 3. The usual Mosaic account of chapter 1st, ending only at chapter 2, verse 3. Even in this usual account, more than 7 periods can be found, including heaven, earth, and men. These are real Mosaic periods with his own names, very different from the subsequent Jewish names in various dialects. 1. The period of time, or Yom Brashith. real, beginning or real, superior, being producing alim, the angels, shmim, heavens, and arst, earth. Now, if I butcher these, hey, y'all don't even play with me. I don't even be speaking Hebrew like that or nothing like that. So y'all bear with me now. 2, yum, hell, ubya, chaos, and the abyss with ruh, spirit of God. 3, yum, ar, essence of celestial light or ether, first divine manifestation of Mesheh or Moses. 4, yum, arkail, Arkio, expanse or sky, diversion of aerial and celestial fluids. 5, yum, sea and dry land, upheaving of land over the waters or subsiding of the ocean, vegetation. 6, yum, sun and moon appearance by a change in the misty atmosphere with Uksumbim, stars, question mark. The 7th, yum, fishes and fowls, etc. 5th, 8, yum, meaning that you can't account the geology of the earth for the first 3 because the earth wasn't accounted for, so you have to minus 3. That's why it's got it as the 5th, I believe. 8th, yum, beasts and cattle with a dum. Mankind or human emanation are Adam, Sir, male, and the B, female. 9th, yum, Shbaoi, 7th manifestation, Aliyem, became Aewe, Jehovah, the living self with self, the supreme or powerful self. 10, yum, ad, emanation, or mist. 11, yum, adam, into yum, or gam, are Eden. 12, yum, ots, growth of lives with good and evil. 13th, yum, ner, 4 flowing emanations or streams. 14, yum, asher, intellectual man, mate, called afterwards Ewa, living existence, are Eve, self with life. All these periods should require long comments and discussions, rather physical than historical, and that's so true. These require long discussions. It is by no means certain that the sun and moon are implied in the 6th yum. The text says a couple of marth centralites, imaur, GDL, and imaur katan, self, great ether, greatest and lesser. Some have seen here the solar and lunar dynasties of Asia. The Uxbim might be the Xorobim of later times. I guess that might be Cherubim. I don't know. I don't read Hebrew like that, y'all. The real sun and moon may belong to the Yum of Ar. The stars, according to Job, were in existence before the foundation of the earth, and our astronomy teaches this implicitly. In this cosmogony, the heavenly creation takes 4 periods. The grass grows by light before the sun had appeared through the misty atmosphere, and the fishes come after the land and herbs, and the same period with fowls. Our actual geology does not confirm this last fact, but a proper explanation of the biblical words would confirm the truth. Many still consider Haish, intellectual man, as the human race previous to Adam, father of the Adamites, but the concurrent proofs are very slender, nor is their posterity known, unless Nahash, or the snakes, Elohim, or the sons of God, the Raphaines, or giants, and the Nephilim, or apostates, be considered as such. Indications of races of men different from the Adamites may be collected both in the Bible and in all the ancient annals of China, India, Iran, etc., but no positive connected account has ever been made out as yet. The Nahash, Hareth, or Satan of the Bible is identical with the Nagas, snakes of the Hindus, the Zabul and Dives, devils of Iran, evidently men and foes of the Adamites. They are also the Yulong, or antediluvian dragons of China. In America, the satanic notions will be seen in the respective account of religions. They often assume in this hemisphere the appearance of volcanic ideas or of a vampire, malignant being. But the nations of the Lenape group connect the ideas of devils, snakes, and foes, all called Ako or Nahako, very similar with Nahash and Nagaz. They assert that they were created by the evil spirit, were always foes of real men, that they caused the flood and went afterwards to America before the Strait of Bering was formed. See Lenape traditions. The Elohim, Elohim, or Agrigori, or angels of the Hebrew, were instead sons of God, and Moses ascribes to them the creation of the earth, while Job ascribes it to Eloah, the real God. Herder has said that we shall never understand well the Mosaic history until we ascertain who these Elohim and Cherubim dwelling on earth. My dissertation on antediluvian history may perhaps help to clear the matter. Meantime, it may be stated that they appear to be the Holo of antediluvian Chinese history, or Lolo of their post-diluvian annals. Perhaps also the celestial emperors beginning the history of China, the Aloras, first dynasty of Assyria before the flood, the Ang Elos and Peel of the Pelagians. Also the Elo, old men of the Egyptians, the Pele, old men or ancestors of the ancient Illyrians, the Lahi, or ancient Tibetans. They may be the Ele, or ancient Persians, the Paris, or Pelis of Iran, ancient beneficent beings. The Arabs and all the Semitic nations have preserved that name for God in El, Allah, Baal, or made of it their universal article El, Al, meaning he or the being. Whence also the Pelagic and Italic articles Il, El, Li, etc. The Spanish El. By the frequent usual change of L into R, we have root found in many languages for men, forming the Heros of Greece, sons of God, the Her, or lords of the Germanic tribes, the Saris of Tibet, or ancient Chinese, Argaz men of the African Atlantes, Urk men in Turkish or Turan Atlantes, akin to Egregori. In America, these similar indications are widely spread and among the most ancient nations. El means man in Tolteca and Mexican, Ol is Ol, and Yolo a spirit or angel. El is son in tribe in Haiti. Elohi is land and spirit in Tuluki. Yol means man in the Atacapa language of the Caddo and Natchez group. Pele means the same in Lule of South America, but Peli is so in Chilean, which approximate to Peleg and Lelex, ancient Pelagian tribes. The connections with Tel, Tal, Tol pervade the whole of ancient America and lead to assimilate with the Toltecas and Talas. American Atlantes, the Tolans, or Asiatic Atlantes, the Atotols, or African Atlantes. You see the parallels there that we just went through? That one's really good. I'm going to stop there for a second because you got the connections with Tel, Tal, Tol, pervade the whole of ancient America and lead to assimilate with the Toltecas and the Talas. American Atlantes, the Tulans, the Atulans, Huehuetlapalan, or Asiatic Atlantes, the Atotols, or African Atlantes, tying it back into the black nations. Do you understand? These lead to the giants of both hemispheres, or ancient men of renown, but the subjects must be postponed and will be found resumed in the history of Austral and Central America, where these Atlantes and giants are found. Returning from this digression, we may resume the geological periods of America previous to mankind in the 6 successful epochas already mentioned. Number 1 period, primitive aquatic and before life. 2, period of aquatic organic life. 3, the period of aquatic cataclysms. 4, the period of dry land or islands. 5, the period of terrestrial life. 6, the period of terrestrial volcanoes, after which begins the human period, till the flood. The question whether man or men appeared together or before or after in both hemispheres must be left undecided. Some writers have even placed Eden, the Gien of Moses, in America, and the Hesperidian islands of old. Because you already know, America is the true old world. But as the Himalaya mountains, valleys, and plains are higher than the Andes, older in geological series and more suitable for human life, this is where the conjecture comes in. You see, it's more suitable over here though, you see? And it's not, see, watch, he's going to keep going. So you got to kind of like watch what they're doing. And more suitable for human life, not being volcanic, it is extremely probable. Extremely probable. You hear him? Extremely probable. So the conjecture falls in place. It's not necessarily, oh, well, it's more probable that we think it's over here, or more probable that I want to lean towards over here. Watch the hijacks. That they were the cradle of mankind rather than America. See? So if it's not them if it's not over there, then it's over here, is what you're essentially saying, right? Okay, I'll take that for right now. Yet, men reached America before the flood and were here at this eventful period. But we are ignorant of the precise way they came. They didn't, what do you mean they came? From where? What? They was already here, right? And then only a group of large islands, unless North America, was united to Asia by Bering Strait, as very probable. Well, it was. So there you go with that one. We know that 18,000 years ago, our coastlines were a lot the water was a lot lower, so our coastlines were out. We have definite proof of this right in the Gulf of Mexico, where we have ancient civilizations that are literally right off of the coast. So we can clearly see that, yeah, the water was at a lower point at one time. There's no doubt about it, thereby allowing these land masses of America and Asia to be one and the same. That's why we have Asia Major. That's why we have Asia Minor. India Superior, America. The clearest traditions point to the East, Africa, and Europe, then united at the Strait of Gibraltar and the island Atlantis as a stepping place. The Mexican traditions point to Asia by two different opposite quarters, the East and the Northwest. The Oskis, or Inuit nations, are latecomers by the Northwest. Latecomers. The Lenape nations, although earlier, came the same way, and over the ice of Bering Strait after its disruption. The Hongwese came the same way, although they boast of bearing autochthons, as did the Greeks, which we know in both instances to be false. The Natchez nations say they came from the east. The Olmecas, or earliest people of Anahuac, point that way also, although both speak of an American flood. So that's a really important one too, okay? Talking about they didn't come from far, they came from right here among their own land in America, okay? Which was far for them, a faraway land. If we talking about I'm going from the Yucatan to Florida, and those times, that's a faraway land. That ain't, you know what I'm saying? The Haitians and Cubans were also of Eastern origin, like all the Arawak nations. Okay, so dodge the hijack. We watching what's going on with what they conjecturing over here. But we have to also try and see what they're tying to. Because if they're saying they came from over there, they're not understanding that they are coming back from America in the first place. But remember the flood and parcelling of the islands. The Carib nations appear post-Diluvians, and the last come in South America. Yet the Tamanacs, one of the group, speak of an American flood. The Guarani call themselves Eastern men and came from Africa after the flood. It is in South America, the Andes of Chile, Peru, etc., that a positive memory was found in several floods and cataclysms in or near the Andes, which gave refuge to several tribes. Yet, it is there also that the most obvious philological affinities are found with North Africa and the shores of the Mediterranean, while many invasions of foreign later nations are recorded, etc. All these antediluvian notions and accounts of the American flood will be carefully collected and given. This will form the first period of human history in America, extending to 2,262 years at least, according to the computation of the 70, the most plausible of all. The Toltecs reckon nearly the same time between their period of creation and their main flood, or with trifling differences, less than the various terms of Josephus and others. But various others' calculations are found in Anahuac. Now, also remember this is at 1836, so this is before Boerberg's work, if I'm not mistaken. Boerberg is after, and we're going through Boerberg's work and all his translations of the Popol Vuh, the Codex Chimopopica, as he is the one that has been chosen to do this out of everybody in the world. Of course, those are some of the last remaining documents that were obtained, by the Spanish, before the Spanish came, Such a period of 23 centuries was certainly sufficient to people America and fill it. The Cainites, or Kabils, have been deemed parents of the Atlantes and Africans. You got them? You hear that? So we got that right there. That's like, well, cool. Drop. What? Cainites, or Kabils, have been deemed parents of the Atlantes and Africans. They were skillful, powerful, and wicked, inventing agriculture and arts, building cities, etc., while the Sethites invented astronomy, letters, and dwelt in tents. If the American Atlantes were antediluvian, they must have sprung from the Atlantes Cainites, kin of Moses. In 1170 years after Adam, the Igorogori, angels of Mount Ima, came to Mount Hermon in 20 tribes under their king, Semi-Azar, and uniting with the Cainites gave birth to the Rephaim, Nephilim, and Eliud tribes of giants, tyrants, and cannibals, who made war on the angels and men. They are said in the Bible to have gone to Sheol, the lower world, or South America, with their king Belial, where they were drowned by the flood. See Universal History. The giants dwelt in Dolo, the world, Dolo, of the Hindus, where we find the Toltecas, Tol people. Therefore, America, called also Atala, and once sunk in the waves. Again, if you ain't already watched, go check out America is Atala. Right here's another confirmation of it. The giants dwelt in Tolo, the world Tolo of the Hindus, where we find the Toltecas, Tol people. Therefore, America, called also Atala, and once sunk in the waves. Like the Atlantis of the Greek, whose Atlantes were also giants or powerful men. You see, it all comes back to America. All legends come back, mythologies come back to America. The Igorogori have been deemed the titans of the Greeks, and Atlas was a titan. Although gigantic nations existed in America, the Telegas, Toltecas, Caribs, Chileans, etc. Being often such, the term giant must always be understood to refer to powerful, perverse men. The names of Rephaim and Nephilim appear unknown in America, being mere Hebrew epithets for giants and apostates. During this primitive period, geological and physical changes probably proceeded in America. The plains gradually appeared, but full of marshes, lakes, and wide streams, muddy volcanoes, snakes, crocodiles, and obnoxious animals, which must have assailed mankind and greatly impeded their settlements. Although the lives of men were perhaps longer than now, yet it is probable that the long lives of the patriarchs of this period allude to as many dynasties or gradual nations sprung from each other. Possibly. In this I agree entirely with the learned Hebrew scholar D. Olivet. Huge beasts and carnivorous animals dwelt then on earth. In America, several species of mastodons, elephants, oxen, Megatherium, megalonyx, hyenas, bears, etc., which prowled in plains and caves. The temperature of the earth was higher. Little clothing was needed. Men were at war with beasts and among themselves. Violence predominated in many regions, and Noah, one of the Manus of the Hindus, a patriarch of the Adamites, a prophet, according to the Arabs, went over the earth to preach against this corruption. Not being attended to, he foresaw that a great calamity would befall for these iniquities, and he prepared himself a Thebe, or refuge in Central Asia, where he collected his relations and friends. Okay, so they say Central Asia. Some say they, but what we talking about? If we talking about Asia, what you talking about? Asia Major? You dig what I'm saying? Like, when you talking about America, y'all, you gotta watch it because which Asia? Some say there were 72. Our translations of Moses reduces them to 8, but his 3 sons of Noah are evidently as many tribes. The Thebeh of Noah contained therefore 4 tribes, including his own, and many individuals, besides a multitude of animals. I do not give now the history of this flood. Before it can be given accurately, we must collect all the scattered traditions about it, compare them, and omitting all fabulous and obvious impossible details, form a narrative of the whole facts. These notions and traditions of the Americans are very various, as they do not always point to this flood. We find them asserting that men were saved in mountains or caves, on rafts or boats. Few, if any, allude to an ark, but all to a refuge as Thebeh. Those of Mexico and Peru are contradictory, alluding to several floods, and particularly the subsequent of Peleg. The most explicit traditions on that score are those of the Lenape nations, although the tribes vary the tale. The holy song of the real Lenape tribe alludes clearly to a great flood in Asia, when their nations at least was partly saved in Tula, the Turtle Land, in Central Asia, by the help of a goddess and Noah or Nanabush. The men were then called. Did you hear that though? Alludes clearly to a great flood in Asia, when the nations at least was partly saved in Tula. The men were then called Lenoe and Lenape. 2 other races of men were saved, the Owini beings and the Tulapiwi, turtlings or Atlantes. Besides these foes, the Maskanako, strong snakes, Nakoa, dark snakes, and the Amangamek, monsters of the sea, who caused this dire flood. These notions are strikingly similar to the Asiatic and Hindu fables about the turtle saving mankind at the flood. Nanabush is evidently Noah. His name means Noah, Noah, Her, or the great Noah, and hare. And this is where we fall back into talking about a hare again, the rabbit, right? The rabbit of the Mayan. We're going through this right now in relation to Boberg's work, the translation of the origins of civilization and the cataclysms right here of the 8 volcanoes in the Gulf of Mexico. So this is pretty cool. The Chinese, and again, like I say, it all leads back to America. The Chinese accounts of the first flood do not allude to any ark, but mountains were the refuge of mankind. The Hindu account is very near the Mosaic, but has no boat, and many persons were saved. The accounts of the Assyrians, Arabs, Tartars, Egyptians, Libyans, Greeks, Celts, Polynesians, etc. are all different. The Mosaic account was borrowed from some ancient source now forgotten. It is said that Noah himself wrote an account of the flood and preserved ancient records. Divesting the Mosaic account from the supernatural and impossible, we obtain the real tradition of a great aquatic cataclysm, either a sinking of some lands or an eruption of the ocean, attended with volcanic floods of waters from the Caspian Sea, as Humboldt says, heavy rains, and a change of climate, which overflew the earth, or most of it, except some thabas, refuges, and mountains, swimming over the waters, as it were. There, some men and tribes, many animals, trees, and plants were preserved to spread afterwards again over the earth. After this flood, America was left pretty much as it is now, except that the shores were higher yet, many flat plains inundated and full of marshes. The Antilles yet united in larger islands, and perhaps with Cumana, the Strait of Choco nearly filled up. The diluvial soil, gravel, sand, boulders, and organic remains scattered over the land, the hills, plains, and caves. Many fierce beasts had disappeared, vegetation had been destroyed wherever the flood went. But the buried seeds and those of the mountain plants gradually grew or spread again. The terrestrial animals and birds saved in the mountains spread themselves over the earth. Mankind, in despair at the disaster, kept for a long while on mountains and did not occupy again the desolated hills and plains until many years after. The Chinese account of this flood states positively that it was attended with a change in the length of the year, formerly of only 360 days, a change in the seasons, an increase of cold, rain, and winds, compelling men to dress in skins and mats. Also that the wild beasts and snakes driven to the mountains became very troublesome, men being compelled to defend themselves against their attacks. The Reverend Gleig, in his late History of the Bible, where, like Hales and Russell, he has at last adopted the computation of the Septuagint, and Josephus reckons 5411 years from Adam to our era. The Oriental Christians reckon 5508 years. The Toltecs reckon 5099 years. Gleig puts Noah's flood at 2259 years after Adam. The Chinese and Hindu chronology are partly fabulous, but may be reconciled to these periods, as well as to the second cataclysm of the earth, that of Peleg, according to Bibliists. The only knowledge the Bible gives about it is that the earth was split, broken, or divided in the time of the patriarch or dynasty of Peleg, who lived or lasted from 531 to 870 after Noah's flood. But David has sung this cataclysm in the 18th Psalm. The Chinese account brings this second flood to the year 2296 before Christ, or 858 years after the former. The Hindu account, concealed in many fables, agrees also with this period, but it appears to have lasted longer in many years. It is evidently, in date, the mistaken Hebrew flood, blending both into one and annihilating the place between them. The Chinese account distinctly speaks of both. The first was under Yunti, the second under Yao, and 42 emperors are mentioned between the two floods. In America, it is often difficult to distinguish which is meant by the various imperfect traditions, yet in Mexico and Peru, there are at least 2 cataclysms mentioned by the annals or traditions. Also among some northern tribes, the Lenape annals or songs allude to the second, which broke the volcanoes, the Lusasaki, burnt land, and separated America, or Ekominaki, Snake Island, from Asia to Bering Strait. Thus, the real antediluvian periods lasted nearly 3,000 years from Adam's epocha, or 3,212 by Oriental computation. The interval between Adam and Noah ought to be called the Adamic period. That between Noah and Peleg's floods, the Noahic period. It was at this last convulsion that the earth took its actual form. The Straits of Gibraltar, Calais, Messina, Hellespont, Bosphorus, Bab el-Mandeb, Bering, Malacca, Sunda, etc., were then formed. The Atlantis Island in the Atlantic Ocean and the island Lanka in the Indian Ocean were sunk. The Azores, Madeira, Canaries, etc., are fragments of the Atlantis. Ceylon, Madagascar, etc., the fragments of Lanka. In America, the Boreal Islands may have been broken, like the British Islands of Europe. Some suppose that they might once join together with Iceland. The Antilles were split in the actual form. Bering Strait divided America from Asia. The Polynesia Islands were broken or sunk. The lowlands of Chile, Peru, and the Atlantic shores were inundated and then partially left dry by huge volcanic tides. This cataclysm was not a mere aquatic flood, but a violent volcanic flood, having at least 3 great focuses. 1 in the North Atlantic Ocean, 2 in the Indian Ocean, 3 in Polynesia or the Pacific Ocean. In China, all the lowlands were overflowed and partially overwhelmed. The great islands of Java and Sumatra were formed, which formerly were united with Asia, and several islands in the vicinity under the remembered name of Sundra Land. If mankind had not reached America before Noah, it must surely have reached it before this second cataclysm. The Atlantes were in the neighborhood, and bold navigators, as well as the primitive Pelagians, Libyans, Cantabrians, bearing then various peculiar names, mostly traced in America. 20 American nations have distinct remembrance of this splitting of the American lands and islands, local and partial floods, less general and disastrous than the former. This cataclysm was not so deadly to animals and vegetables as the former, but it must have destroyed them in several sunken lands, and have added second cataclysmic strata to the soil of the plains. With many volcanic productions, chiefly clay and sand, limey and marshy muds, the memorials, annals, and traditions of the American nations are very scanty on this period, difficult to be distinguished from the Adamic, while the monuments to be referred to it are not easily traced nor distinct in form. The Lenape tribes have not yet reached America and dwelt in Asia, but, by their account, the Snake tribes, Ocoee, went to America. In that period, led by Nakupowa, the snake priest. It is even hinted that they caused this cataclysm, or at least the separation of Asia and America, at Lusasaki, burnt land, in order to escape their foes, the Eloe Chick hunters of the Lenape, the original manly people. Notes on Chapter 3. 1. Adam, self-man, is the name given by Moses to the first men pronounced since Adam, Genesis 1, verse 27, but called also Xer and Nakbe, or male and female. The 2D Adam, or Adam, was subsequent, although the commentators have blended them, as they have the floods, days, and other things. Our Bible translation of early events is besides very erroneous. The Talmudist, or Jewish version with points, is not correct, being in a late dialect. The true text of Moses, which I follow, has no points, but admits of a shiva, or soft breathing between consonants. 2. Geological comments are not here required. My business is with mankind. Moses calls men beside Aish, Anush, Garur, and women Nshim, Ithaf, Ashe, Ashith, which are perhaps as many names of early tribes, as well as Haliem, or Ilochem, Expim, Charabim, Nahash, etc. If these primitive names will offer any analogies in America, they shall be thoroughly pointed at hereafter. Hue is the real Eve. Hue is the real Eve. Hue is the real Eve. See the chapter on the Mosaic ontology for many other human beings or early tribe. See the chapter on Mosaic ontology for many other human beings or early tribes. But it may be well to add here the names of the beings of the 7th and 8th yums, which we all deem animals, although they are indications to the contrary. The 7th yum, the mem, waters produced, shirts, production, translated, reptile, no soul, and the fsheh, I don't know, soul living, ouf, foul, made to come from waters and their motion, loaf, meaning both flying and flirting or swimming. Geo 1 verse 2, Genesis 1 verse 20. But the Aliim realized or created the Nim, whales, or rather great fishes, having a soul living. Verse 21. This fine word soul has been translated creature. 8th yum. The earth produces with soul, bemeh, cattle, or herdsmen of life. Verse 24. Rumshet, reptiles or creeping troglodytes? Hithu, beasts or hunters. The bemeh, or perhaps the herdsmen. And all these may be men, over whom Adam was to reign, giving them names. Else all these animals had real souls like men. The fishers or fishermen, the Jeth, only appear in verse 26 at subjects of Adam. Moses and the Hebrew poets divided the animals in 3 classes, which represent also men, and were personified. 1. Shirts. Production, Moses, Leuthan of Job, Leviathan of poets, Nefsh, animated, or number 2, Nefsh, animated, Moses, Ozin, or Hozan of poets. Moses had 2 kinds of these, Theninim, aquatic, and Ophshif, fowl, strong-winged, and he had 2 of the last, Shirts, aquatic reptile, and Oph, aerial fowl. Number 3, Hithu, beast of 2 kinds, Bemeh and Rumshish, which are the behemoth of Job, behemoth of poets. Number 3, the cherubim were deemed angels, but of 4 sorts, 3 having faces of a lion, ox, and eagle, which indicates tribes bearing those names, or the 4 primitive castes of mankind, the oxen referring to the laboring caste, the lion to the militant caste. So this is interesting too, because when we talk about the cherubim, it's like a lot of people don't even, we go back into like, you can kind of take it back to like the griffins, you can take it back to like the, what is the Mexican, the mystical beings of, I was just thinking about that recently, Alebrijes, right? So that makes me think in that regard. Number 4, see his learned work, translation, and paraphrase of the first chapters of Genesis, wherein the best account of the creation, antediluvian history, and the flood has been given. Number 5, Lanka was, according to the Hindus, a big land under the equator, including perhaps the Deccan or south of India, then separated by a sea from the Himalaya mountains, now yet a vast level plain, and united to Ceylon and other islands. It is in this place, land of Lanka, that many traditions place Adam, with several early events. The Sundara land was very different, a large peninsula south of Asia, including Java, Sumatra, Borneo, etc. Or perhaps an island, if Malacca was separated from Siam by a strait. So that's the end of that one here. There's a lot of good drops in that, but I just wanted to kind of put that forward to give some accounts from Rafinesque in 1836. It's always cool to see these accounts in these olden times in comparison to where we are now in our understanding of everything, because it's just seeing how we've transitioned, what they had then, some of the things maybe that we lost from what they understood back then, and now it's been switched around from like a mainstream or a perspective on a religious side that's just kind of taken away from truths. But there's some good gems in here. There's some good things to bring up in regards to discussions. Because nobody was really there to know for certain anything. So you kind of got to just put everything together as a puzzle piece and just continue to vibe off what we can put together and make sure that we can have a concrete foundation for our overstanding rather than standing under, right? So I love all y'all. Just wanted to bring this one out. Quick read. Peace and blessings. Hawa. Hawaii. Love you.